Digital economy, communication, technology, customer, community, network, social media. VMC, the Vascellari media channel.
Working at Hermanngasse, which is the street's name where our office is situated, and situated in Vienna. I'd like to know, how do you think the financial crisis will influence the Web 2.0 business itself? Because we feel that especially, let's say, marketing decision makers are having much more fear, and they're cutting down their budgets now.
Yeah. Well, go first.
I'll be brief because I think your answer will probably be more thoughtful. But to me, again, it's about how you define Web 2, and I think we're a little bit schizophrenic in the way, at least our events and how we define it, or rather, it can look schizophrenic, but it's a much bigger whole than people realize in terms of it making that connection between the startup world and the enterprise world and sort of all over. But I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Web 2.0 can sort of be the recession diet for enterprises. I mean, who need to scale back their IT spending, they'll have to go to Web 2, and at least that may be only one piece of what happens in the future, but I think that is one bright spot.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people associate Web 2 with advertising-based, consumer startups, and a lot of those are going to be hurt, no question. And companies that don't have a revenue model, that are hoping to get a lot of users and don't have one in an era of tight money, they're going to go out of business. But many of them would have gone out of business anyway, just sooner or later. There is a historical perspective that I've always had on all this. I mentioned earlier looking at the history of the personal computer. There were thousands of software companies in the 1980s for the personal computer companies. But how many are there, by the 90s? Not very many. Microsoft, Computer Associates, Symantec. A few. Borland was still around. But the fact is, consolidation happens. In the early days of a market, there are lots and lots of possibilities, and those possibilities close down over time. Innovation then breaks out somewhere else. So the advertising, bloom, certainly will die back, but now we have cloud computing, and cloud computing is a great way, and cloud computing applications of all kinds are a great way for companies to cut costs in a down market. And so we're going to see a lot more, for example, paid services that are on, the cloud rental model, not just cloud infrastructure, but cloud applications. Google's got Google Apps, and they've kind of identified the big productivity applications. And by the way, Microsoft has admitted that, Google Apps is starting to bite into their sales, and I think that's going to accelerate. So that's going to be good for Google. On the other hand, there are an awful lot of small business applications that have been, are still untouched. And we don't really. There are some startups that are going after those, but I don't think we have anywhere near enough. I think if you look at Force.com, there's a whole Salesforce.com economy of software as a service, business-oriented applications, but huge opportunities there. Various thousands of very specialized business applications, and I think we'll also see. So we're going to see new investment in new areas. We're also going to see over time people are going to figure out the things that do work will in fact get more of the money. There'll also, I think, be increasing opportunities for people who were maybe thinking about startups to actually perhaps sell services to businesses instead, whether it's this area of sort of community engagement, social media, or whether it's other kinds of IT services. As companies try to rebuild their infrastructure and think about how to become more agile and nimble in the network era.
If you look at the show floor upstairs, there's very few companies that are advertising supported. The three main categories are enterprise, collaboration, productivity tools, mobile, and then there's some companies that are targeting marketing, so articles and Xanax. And I mean, that's just this year, right? I mean, it'll evolve further. But that's where that's where we see this event going.
So you can see that as a mirror of the situation here in the, let's say, German-speaking countries or throughout Europe.
And it's hard to say because these companies booked months ago, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're already
They're
not
still
seeing
there.
as many companies who
Yeah.
are in the, what people still think of, and I think is not necessarily true, as the typical Web 2 ad-supported model.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot more paid business going on. You know, when you think, you know, about transactions, you know, it's easy to forget. You know, there's sort of the e-commerce like Amazon, but there's also there are virtual goods, but there's also this new class of, you know, physical goods, mass customization, Move being a really great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also subscription models. You know, we have, you know, at O'Reilly, we have Safari Books Online, a subscription library access. It's actually now it's very close to our second biggest channel for distribution of our books. It's right behind Barnes & Noble, the big U.S. chain, and Amazon. And we may pass Barnes & Noble this year. You know, and it's a subscription business, you know, because we saw long ago that the advertising would not support the kind of content we want to produce. So there are many different business models to be explored.
You know, and just an interesting tidbit about Moo that I learned. When they, at launch, they had one product, one price, one currency, everything. And now they have 23 products and 5 currencies, and they're just expanding out like that.